on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about it. Good day and good day to all the viewers of Africa. Thank you, Africa. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you, Africa.
Cameroon-Nigeria Trans-Border Security a call for concern. The governments of Presidents Paul Biya and Muhammadu Buhari have for the 8th time renewed their commitment to combat insecurity at their borders and equally eliminate secessionist movements in their respective nations. This was during the 8th session of the Cameroon-Nigeria Trans-Border Security Committee that held on August 24 in Abuja, Nigeria. Insurgency and kidnapping for ransom by Boko Haram terrorist groups on their northern borders, kidnappings and killings by separatist fighters in Cameroon's Anglophone northwest and southwest regions, and secessionist struggles by the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB in Nigeria are all cause for concern. All these incidents are what prompted both countries to create the Joint Trans-Border Committee in 2012. However, the insurgency crimes and barbaric killings were highly recorded from 2014 till date. Thousands still remain displaced within their countries, and others have become refugees in neighboring countries. Meanwhile, students and religious are kidnapped on an almost daily basis, with infrastructures burnt down. What role exactly has the committee been playing to ensure security in their countries? What is the better way forward? We talk about this in today's edition of Views on the Continent.
Good day and good day to all the viewers of Africa. Thank you, Africa. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you, Africa.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining me on today's edition of Views on the Continent. It is a rainy day and very wet, but we are here to keep the rendezvous with you on your Pan-African television. Looking at insecurity on today's edition of Views on the Continent, Cameroon and Nigeria Trans-Border Security Committee were on the 24th of August together to speak against insecurity and to fight against the secessionist movements and equally the Boko Haram insurgency, which has been hitting both countries within the borders, within the countries rather, and on their borders. And today the question is, what are they actually doing, or what have they actually been doing since the year 2012 when the committee was created, looking at the rate of insurgencies, looking at the rate of kidnappings and the insecurity which is still hitting those two countries, Cameroon and Nigeria, the countries of President Paul Biya and President Muhammadu Buhari. On today's edition of Views on the Continent, you want our program, which is interactive. We will be hosting Mr. Atem Ebako. Andrin, you are here in the studio with me this afternoon. Thanks for honoring the invitation.
Thank you very much, all the viewers of African Media, and special greetings to all Africans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atem. You braved the rain and the traffic to be in the studio this afternoon just to give it out to our beautiful audience. With that, I will invite us to listen to this report diligently compiled by Laurencia Lunda. Will be back in the studio.
The rise in insecurity in Cameroon and Nigeria in recent times has raised a lot of dust as to what the governments of these two friendly nations are doing to quell the waters and restore peace in their respective countries. In Nigeria, the Boko Haram insurgency, kidnappings and attacks are on the rise, as well as the activities of the secessionist group, the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB, gaining grounds. In Cameroon, the Boko Haram insurgency and the unending war between government forces and separatist fighters has led to the loss of many innocent lives and livelihoods. All these insecurities in both countries have sparked reports that indicate that arms are being smuggled through their border to promote the crisis, especially in Cameroon's northwest and southwest regions. It is in this light that top security and government officials from both states recently held an emergency meeting to derive strategies to curb the rising insecurity. Speaking at the end of the 8th session of the Cameroon-Nigeria Trans-Border Security Meeting in Nigeria's capital Abuja, Babagana Monguno, National Security Advisor to Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, said secessionist groups are uniting to destabilize Cameroon and Nigeria. The retired major stated that the neighboring countries will jointly combat the rebels operating within their borders, adding that President Muhammadu Buhari reassures Cameroon that Nigeria's territory will never be used by any group of secessionists to destabilize another friendly sovereign country. He further noted that Nigeria will continue to support the efforts of Cameroonian authorities to stop the separatist crisis in Cameroon's English-speaking regions. Cameroon's Minister of Territorial Administration, Atanganji Paul, who led his country's delegation to the Abuja session, in a speech during the opening ceremony underscored the importance President Paul Biya attaches to peace and security within and without Cameroon. He said militaries of the two countries are already at work to map out ways of stopping separatists operating in Cameroon and in Nigeria, pointing out that the two countries have decided to provide jobs and improve the livelihoods of people in border areas. At the end of their deliberations, both sides agreed on some key points, including the creation of a structure similar to the Border Community Development Agency in Nigeria and the construction of roads and social amenities along the border to ease the movement of people and goods and guarantee security, which according to them will empower border communities and curb the rising crime wave. The meeting that ran from Tuesday, August 24 to Thursday, August 26, 2021 in Abuja ended with both countries signing a bilateral cooperation agreement. Nigeria and Cameroon share a 1,975 kilometers border, and the militaries of both countries have been jointly fighting violent crises since 2010. Cameroon says separatists use porous borders to import weapons through Nigeria, and collaboration between the Ambazonia Defense Forces and indigenous people of Biafra is making the security situation very uncertain.
Thank you very much, Lawrence Yalung, for this report, joining us back in the studio. This is Views on the Continent, and we have about 45 minutes to go together. In due time, we're going to open up our lines to receive your calls, your contributions, and your views on our program today. Cameroon-Nigeria Transborder Security, a call for concern. Mr. Atem Ibako. This is the situation at hand. On the 24th of August, the delegation of Cameroon's government officials were in Abuja to talk on the security situation of the borders of the two countries, and equally the insecurity that has been fueled by the secessionist groups in those two countries. So what's your impression about that meeting, first of all?
Well, I think that the meeting for the two countries to come together and discuss about the insecurities which are facing and raging the two countries, I think that it was vital for them to sit together and see how they can mitigate and they can stabilize the insecurity by, becomes the question, by what means? Is it by allowing or to beef up their security system to resist or to fight against the insurgents or the jihadis or the bandits or the separatist fighters? The by becomes the question. What approach and what methods are they going to use in order to stabilize peace in these two regions, let me put it that way, in such a way that it can improve the standard of Africa? And that is the approach that worries me so much, because as a matter of fact, when you have, we're talking about sovereignty and the rights of the people to manage and to lead their own affairs and to be masters of their own destinies, you see, it becomes a very challenging matter when you find countries like Nigeria calling on the United States to come help them in the insecurity in their own country. You see, and these are the things that we are wondering if truly we have leaders that are representing the people or leaders that are serving the interests of the imperialists, because we cannot have these leaders as individuals or in a form of a state that take decision as a matter of fact assuming to be in the interest of the masses, when yet it is not. As a matter of fact, the opinions and the views of the masses are not put into consideration. If we were talking about insecurity coming in from a strange land or from Russia or from China or from America or from Europe, we would understand. But we are talking here of Africans that are fighting Africans. So we should be able to first diagnose to understand really what are the core of these agitations and what is the root core or the genealogy of all of this instability and all of these insecurities that we are having, the bandits, the separatist fighters, the jihadis, I mean the resistance movement which is happening. As a matter of fact, it's the talk of the day in Africa today. We need to be able to understand why we have all of this in Africa. We are not having it is because our governments are good. We are having all of this agitation which is coming from what I call the 85% of the masses. Put it this way, in Africa or in any of these nations. The population of each of these countries have been kept in abject poverty for such a very long period of time that has moved from one generation to another generation, that as a matter of fact, the people are pushed to the wall where they are left with no other option than to rebel.
Yeah.
So what we are dealing here, we are actually fighting, or the insecurity that we are building in the minds of the people, that we are dealing here with armed separatist fighters, we are dealing here with extremists, we are dealing here with jihadis, we are dealing here with insurgents and all of that. It is not really what it is. What the media is painting is not really what is happening on ground. We are absolutely having people who are fighting to defend their integrity, to defend their birthright, and to defend their motherland. And these are the people who are resisting the system, and the system is painting them a different image. Let's take a good look at what just happened today in Afghanistan. The Americans left for all the 2 decades that the Americans have been in Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, they made the whole world believe that the Taliban were terrorists. But today now, the Taliban have taken over their nation, and now we know who really were the terrorists, were the Americans, were the multinationals. And this is the same case in Africa. So the idea of the 2 nations, Cameroon and Nigeria, fighting to build border security and make sure that they can fight all of this insecurity is not for the interest of the African people. If we had leaders that absolutely reflected the views, the spirit, the aspiration, and the hope of their people, we will not have insecurity in Africa. That simply means leaders that go in front of us to be able to meet the demands of their society and meet the demands of their own nation. We will not be talking about insecurity in Africa, but we have leaders that have become gatekeepers, that are preventing the masses from getting access to the natural resources of their own land, what their land is able to bless them. These leaders have become gatekeepers and have prevented the majority from getting the life and having a sense of belonging. I mean, joining them in that whole aspect of journey of building a nation. The people are kept away, and the government become the major actor, and the government become the major employer. So this becomes the huge challenge that we will never, as a matter of fact, having governments that, let me put it this way, I think it's very important for the Africans that are watching this program and the viewers to understand what we are dealing here with in Africa. You see, the governments we have in place, do not forget that these are governments, or these are leaders or individuals that derive from what I call an opposition party. Now that simply means that we are not talking of a head of state here that came as a result of an appointment or is representing the masses or representing the people. We are having here a head of state that is representing a party on the behalf of the nation. That means that he did not come through the door of the masses, and therefore means that it is in his interest to make sure that he keeps his party politics and he stays in power to benefit the lives of those that put him in power, and not the masses that seem to come from different opposition backgrounds. So it makes leadership in Africa very challenging, because when we are talking of democracy, it employs rooms for political parties. And it is this political party that divides the views and causes Africans to fight among themselves. And that is why you notice that in majority of the elections that we conduct in Africa, people always die. Why? Because there's already an opposition to start with. You cannot talk of building a nation, advancing the cause of a nation, and then you come in with division and you come in with opposition. Let me put it this way. Africa is a structure and it's a body. It is an entire mechanism that needs to work together in order to function normally. And if Africa has been separated in 54 to 55 nations, considering the Africans that are in the diaspora, that simply means that if Africa is going to move forward as a continent, then African head of state and African government will need to come together in order for Africa and the continent of Africa to actually, enjoy that sovereignty and have that right to be able to become masters of itself. But right now, what we have today in Africa, we have individuals that are running each African nation as a private state-owned company. That makes it become very difficult, and that leaves the masses away from the cause of building their nation. And that is why you realize that the West sometimes talks about building our private sector, like we had the last time they went to the summit in France, where Macron was talking of how he was going to help the African member states in building their private sector. Why did they mention the private sector? Is because all of these agitations, this jihadist movement, extremists, separatist fighters are coming from what I call that 85% that have lived under abject poverty, and that's the private sector. So they understand that the agitation is absolutely coming from the private sector. But why is it coming from the private sector? Only because the government have not been able to integrate the masses in building of their nation. We cannot be talking of countries, Nigeria, Cameroon, as a matter of fact, and yet we are talking of America, we are talking of Britain, we are talking of France having to control their politics. So where then does it leave the Nigerians? As a matter of fact, I call it leadership in leadership against leadership. So all of these separatist fighters, this jihadist movement, are what I call those that are against the leadership, because the how will I put it, the government or the leaders we have in place do not reflect the people. You cannot tell me, for example, we are talking of a country where you have 26 million people. Nigeria, we are talking about for 240 something million people. And the country has a problem, and the president decides to go to a different country, thousands of kilometers away, where you do not have blood relationship with the other people, and then you are asking them to come and help you. Why is it that the African Union, in all of these insecurities that we are talking of here in Cameroon, in Africa, in Nigeria, do you know, as a matter of fact, Madam Rita, that we have a special force in Africa which is called the AFRICOM? I'm sure you have heard of it before. Now, the AFRICOM is headed by the United States as an independent organization by the United States to bring peace and stability and to push prosperity in the African member state. The AFRICOM has its headquarters in Germany, in Stuttgart. Now, what is the duty of the AFRICOM? It has soldiers on ground in Africa, both humanitarian and both military, to make sure that Africa is stable. Not stable in the sense that it should be in the interest of the Africans. Stable in the sense that their investments in Africa are protected using these governments. What do you explain the fact that we are talking here of all of these insecurities, Madam Rita, in Nigeria, in Cameroon, yet it doesn't affect the multinationals, it doesn't affect their enterprises, it doesn't affect their structures, it only affects the Africans? That simply tells you that they are only here when we talk about the insecurity. It is only to make sure that the foreign investments in Africa are properly protected, and not to protect the Africans. Because if you are talking of protecting the Africans, then the Africans should be able to have access to their own resources to improve the life standard of their own society. And that is why I said that another definition of a poor man, it is the inability for you to earn more than what you spend. Poverty is not the absence of money. It is the inability to have access to what you have in order to develop your own life. So the poverty in Africa is a man-made poverty, just like the refugees in Afghanistan. They are not refugees because they are visitors and tourists in Africa. Refugees are those who flee from war zones and find themselves in different parts of the world. They are granted political asylum. But here, we saw how America was creating refugees by taking people out from their lands and then titling them as refugees by settling them in different parts of the world. So these issues we are facing in Africa today, it's a man-made poverty, and that is why we will never stop having insecurities in Africa unless Africans, I still say this, unless the youths of Africa begin to get involved in politics, because it is their future and destiny that we are talking here, and that is what matters. Until we get these youth involved and start building and putting efforts in erecting the kind of government and leaders that comes from them, that are going to represent them, that are going to be accountable to them, and do not allow others who will sit like ghosts and bring in leaders, and you expect those leaders after being put by another person to make your life better. It's not possible. You cannot reap what you have not sown. We need the Africans to come together, build in structures, build in systems, get involved in decision making, because here we are talking about a matter of life and death. It is the history that sets up the present and the future. If we cannot make those right decisions today, we are not going to see light tomorrow. So it's very, very important that we should not allow leadership in the hands of this minority. As a matter of fact, we need to get the majority in full active participation.
They are talking of these transborder committee being created. since the year 2012, like seriously. And but we remember that in the year 2014, there was really the hard hit insurgencies in the northern part of Cameroon, and which actually is the border of between Cameroon and Nigeria. There were a lot of massive killings and kamikaze and everything. We realized that these killings, kidnappings, and criminal activities had just increased after the year 2012, when a joint committee against insecurity was created between members of the two countries. How do you analyze their efforts? Because many have been asking and wondering what is the state of their actions, what's the current state of their actions against insecurity, given that thousands of persons are still displaced, internally displaced persons within their countries, and we still find them as refugees in neighboring countries. We have Nigerians who are refugees in Cameroon, and vice versa.
But amazingly, we do not have refugees of the multinationals. And that is what really draws my concern. Because when you look at Africa today, looking at Cameroon, looking at Nigeria, and looking at majority or almost all the African countries, the Africans themselves are not the highest investors in Africa, are the multinationals. As a matter of fact, in Nigeria, America, Britain are the largest investors in Nigeria. In Cameroon, we have France, which is the leading investor in Cameroon. Now, if you look at what the Cameroonians and what the Nigerians are running in terms of state companies, comparing to that of the West, it's an economic rape. As a matter of fact, it's an abuse to human rights, and I think that it's an abuse to democracy, and this is another form of what I call slavery. You cannot tell me of multinational, you talk about investments in a country where their investment does not meet or does not benefit the people of that country. It is not win-win. As a matter of fact, being very dead serious, in Nigeria equally as in Cameroon, many of these multinationals are running their corporations without paying taxes. Many of them have treaties that limits us to certain projects and certain contracts and certain execution. So as a matter of fact, when you look at the whole setup in which I'm trying to describe here, that we have those that are in control of our democracy, influencing the policies and the laws that binds our people, and that tends to affect the functionalities of our state and the mentality of the people. That does not give our leaders the full potential, ability, and resources and means to absolutely execute what they felt they could do for their nation. As a matter of fact, majority of them are left with no options. They want to do what is correct, but as a matter of fact, it's only when you get there then you come to understand the reality of being a president. Majority of them who sprang from political parties were just excited and they did not understand that all those opposition parties you see like that, the West was just using under the context of democracy to build what I call census, to know tribes that are more than the other, leaders that are more influential, parties which have more following and all of that. And then among all of that, like they always do all the time, they look which party have more following, and then they take their leader, polish him, brand him, compromise him, and then push him now into power. So he gets into power, and then the people begin to wonder, but he promised us this. He promised us that, like the people in Zamfara, talking about the rebels in Nigeria that are doing a lot of the adoption. Some of them had interviews where we got to understand that they are agitating and they are rebelling to get back to the state that gave them promises and were not able to fulfill. So we are dealing here with disgruntled individuals and people who believe that as human beings and as individuals, they have the right as Nigerians and as Cameroonians to learn to be masters of themselves and fight for their own destiny. So the people you find them fighting, it's just like what we are dealing here in the Anglophone region. Their methods of fighting may not be right, but their motive for fighting is a genuine cause that all human beings are given the right to decide their own future. And when another human being deprives another from having that access to life, it becomes a huge problem, and that's where we have resistance. So what we needed, Nigeria, Cameroon, in the 8th meeting they had in Nigeria, was to discuss on how to get into an all-inclusive dialogue with all of these separatists, jihadists, Boko Haram, name them the way the West has put them, but they are all Africans. As a matter of fact, we saw France sending last time 5,100 troops from France to Chad to come and do what? To come and kill Africans. We need Africans to get to that place where they are able to sort out their differences.
Confirming that. All right, let's keep on. You talked about these secessionist movements. Now we are having secessionist movements in Nigeria and Cameroon, the IPOB in Nigeria and the Ambazonia in Cameroon. We are having them, we've seen them carry out riots, protest actions, burning down infrastructures, kidnapping the same civilians whom they say they are fighting for, and kidnapping even for ransom. How do you see their own way of expressing their disgruntlement? Is it the right way or not?
You see, that's a very good and complex question. When a man tries to find a fault where there is no fault, it becomes another problem. When you are trying to solve a problem by creating another problem, may equally be your own means and strategy of expressing yourself, because you are not in that position to make the right decision to better your life and to achieve what you are looking for. So the strategies of these armed separatist fighters, whether the Ambazonia or the IPOB in Nigeria or whatever, it's their own way. They need, and that's why you realize that their targets are always such that draws the attention of the government, because their problem is with the government. If you look at the schools and the schools of the adoption of children in Nigeria, they are all government schools. They don't go to private schools. Many are government schools, and they always touch areas that will always draw the attention of the government. So you come to realize that, I mean, even here in Cameroon, we understand. We know what the armed separatist fighters are doing. And you have to also understand that these groups of people are coming from a background of poverty. You are talking of people coming from a group and a mass, an area of a population that has lived in abject poverty. So they do not have funding. They don't have supplies. They are not the government. They do not have access to the land's resources. They cannot sell the resources in order to generate income, whereby now the people now become their own source of raising income. So that is their own procedure for now. But such procedures, as time begins to evolve and as they are also growing, those procedures are also changing. When now we are having kidnapping, tomorrow we might not be having kidnapping. When they start having proper funding coming in, you will not have kidnapping. But this is their own way of surviving. And when people are left in that kind of condition where they are left with no option than to survive. I have seen where pigs eat pigs because it needs to survive. So we cannot use the people's situation and circumstance in which they find themselves in, and then we want to use it to discredit their cause. Their cause remains to be the one that the government have not been able to address. And that is the results of what we are getting, whether it's kidnapping, bombing, destruction of all of this. If the government puts an end by getting into an all-inclusive dialogue with these individuals that we have painted them to become demons, you will not have all of these things that we are all describing. So why don't we look at the governments, and let's keep the separatist fighters at one point aside, and let's look at what the government is not doing. What is the government not doing? The government is not doing what it's supposed to do when a family has a problem. When a family has a problem, you solve that problem in the family and make sure that things are normal in the family. But you cannot divide a family and then paint one side of the family to become an enemy, and then paint the other side of the family to become, people who are against this. All of this does not work, and that is why, to me, the separatist fighters that we call them today, if tomorrow Nigeria separates, they will not be called separatist fighters anymore. If tomorrow Northwest and Southwest separates from Cameroon, we will call them separatist fighters. We will call them terrorists. All those names will cease. Today we don't call them terrorists in Afghanistan. They call them now Taliban. That means students of Allah. Those are the ones now that have taken over Afghanistan. So what I'm just trying to say here is that when there is always a fight and it's not in your interest, you find a best means to paint your enemy a very bad image. But to me, it is not a solution that we must go down through this road. Africans, at this point, needs to be able to get into what I call all-inclusive dialogue. And then I go to further say that such dialogues will only come when the masses are going to put in their efforts and pressurize the government, assume their position to let the government and the separatist fighters understand that they are not going to watch both parties destroy their nation. Because I have had a lot of interviews on people that keep saying that it is the masses that are suffering. It is the masses that are going through this untold suffering. And I always used to say that if you watch in any revolution or in any president being elected, it takes always the masses to either get the president in power or either get the kick-off of the revolution. So we cannot be talking of solutions and then we keep the masses away. This is very important. Same like in the Northwest and in the Southwest. We need the masses to rise up and assume a position of responsibility, because we are talking of nation building. Everyone has a chain of responsibility. The government, the armed separatist fighter, and the population. We have seen in the early 2000s in Egypt, where the population went out for 17 good days without using a political party and went and stated out their position until Hosni Mubarak came down out of power. We saw that the same in Mali. Malians also went out without using a political party. The nation came together as in their sovereignty, because they say power is with the people. The people went out and the government of Keita came out of seat. So what I'm saying here is that the masses and the population have a vital role to play to end any insecurity in the nation. And I go by, before you take the microphone, by settling it that I have made analysis time without numbers after judging all statistics and looking at all the cards put on the table. The governments in Africa can never solve the problems we have in Africa. Change in Africa will never ever come from our leadership, because our leadership in Africa, as far as democracy is concerned, is failed.
So do you imply that the ideology of African solutions for African problems is not the right thing?
The ideology for African problems...
African solutions for African problems.
Yes, I think I'll buy that ideology.
Because you just said African leaders cannot solve their own problems.
That's why I use the context, under the context of democracy.
Okay.
Democracy is not an African thing.
Okay.
Democracy only came here to employ ministers and ambassadors, middlemen and brokers, as in a form of presidents, to deceive the masses that they are in control, they can decide their own future, when yet those leaders are being teleguided by those that are behind democracy. And that is why I ended by saying that democracy is a rule of the minority over the majority. So before democracy was instituted in the world, we were just coming from a very dictatorial period, whereby the dictators were looking for another means to transfer dictatorship in a form of a system or in the form of a government. And that's where democracy was seen as the only means to give the people a false impression that through democracy they can express themselves and they can have the right to decide their own future, when yet their future is still being decided by these few people. And a very clear example of this democracy under the context of our African leadership that we are talking today, I still cite the case of the United Nations Security Council. We have 5 members that do not accept elections since 1945. Those 5 members are unchangeable, controlling the decision of 10 members. As a matter of fact, like I keep saying, that elections are not permitted to take place at the level of the United Nations. So this simply tells you that these 5 members are the minority and the 10 members are the majority. Who controls who is the minority at the level of the UN National Security Council. That means that per what their constitution says, it says that if 9 members takes a decision, 1 member among the veto members have the right to annulate the decision of 9 members. So that means that it is the minority that controls the majority. Okay. Now let's bring it down and flush it to Africa. You understand what is happening in Africa?
Okay, Mr. Andrin Atem, thank you very much for your take on this first part of views on the continent. Director, we can open our lines to receive calls and contributions of our fellow viewers. The topic subject matter of the day, Cameroon-Nigeria trans-border security, is already a call for concern since 2012 after the creation of this trans-border committee to fight insecurity on the borders of Cameroon and Nigeria. We are wondering what's happening. We are wondering the insecurity keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. And we have records of the 2004, the level of insurgency in 2014 at the borders of these two countries, in 2016 equally, when the Anglophone crisis started taking another turn. And here we are today. What is this committee doing in order to curb these insurgencies and this insecurity at the borders of Cameroon and Nigeria, and equally within the hip-hop sector of Nigeria, and equally the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. So we open our lines to get the contributions of our callers. We have a first caller already on standby. Hello, sir. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Rita, I'm viewers of African Media. This is Shujera calling from Yaoundé. Looking at the security meetings that the two countries, Cameroon and Nigeria, have been meeting for the 8th time now, it is showing no success, because as soon as they meet and discuss issues concerning trans-border securities and secessional movement within the two countries, the more the violence escalate, the more the idea escalate. Coupled the fact that these two countries have been battling with secessionist movement in their respective country and terrorist groups in their respective country. The find Nigeria is tackling with insecurity in most of the towns, and most of their and Nigeria, some of their leaders are calling for civilians to secure themselves with guns in order to combat security. That shows that their military is weak and could not be able to do it. Considering the fact that they are unable to unseat Boko Haram. Remember that Buhari, when he came to power, he promised to bring back the Chibok girls who were kidnapped by Boko Haram, and promised to end Boko Haram. That was the weakness of the last government of Goodluck Jonathan, and he promised that he was going to do it. And today, he has not done it. The military is weak, and the Nigerian military is weak, coupled with the fact that the guns are circulating in Nigeria at will now, and a lot of kidnappings going on, a lot of groups coming up. Not only Boko Haram is active there, but robbers and other criminal groups are already showing up and claiming responsibility for most of the attacks in Nigeria, defeating the military. I don't know how they are going to do it, because securing the borders, yes, it's a good idea to combat these trans-border crimes, but would they be able to do it? Would they be able to secure the borders? Because guns and others are still entering into the both countries, especially living Nigeria entering into southern Cameroon, and the groups training in Nigeria, and why not? So the question is that would they be able to do it? Because that is not the best way. The best way, as I've been saying in this program, other social groups before, is that we have seen in the past that military solutions have not been solving the issue. We saw if Afghanistan, which is a big lesson to the world, that for 20 years the Americans were unable to defeat or to put back the Taliban to their holes, and today the Taliban resurfaced because they know the strength of the Afghan military. Once the U.S. left the country, they came on. So that is the same way that is going on. That is happening in the Tigris regions of Ethiopia. We saw that the government forces are unable to defeat the rebels who are claiming to be independent. We saw in our own region here in the north and southwest that it's not easy to defeat the freedom fighters. We saw in the Delta region, in the Volta region of Ghana, is not easy. A military soldier being used. We saw in the Sahel. We saw in Somalia. We saw, and I can name them, Rita and viewers of African Media. So instead of meeting time by time, talking about security measures to curb insurgency on secession movement, they should resort to dialogue, because that would have been the only option to end this crisis in the two countries. Thank you
Much, Mr. Shu Gerald, for your contribution. We keep the lines opened, and we get another caller, Lawrence, calling from the northwest region. Hello.
Good afternoon, madam. Hello.
Just go on with your contribution, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, madam.
We can hear you. Go on.
Yes, what I want to say is that, you see, all things is happening because we don't have a union in Africa that is stand for African people. Because since the beginning of the independence of this continent, we don't have a union that can look for African affairs. If you look what is going on in Cameroon and in Nigeria, it's a political issue that we supposed to sit down and talk like the people. But as we have this dictator people that is being controlled by France, because Cameroon government is just like a TV that remote control is in the hands of France. They dictate the type of channel that comes to that TV. So France dictate what will go on in Cameroon. If to understand and battle. The same in Nigeria. So what is caused all this fighting, all this name called terrorists, is because of poverty. And who is causing this poverty is because of dictatorship. It's because these people, when they come to power, they don't have so means that they can create jobs to people. So that's what pushed people to pick arms in Nigeria. Come to Southern Cameroon. I just want the world to know that Southern Cameroon and La Republique de Cameroon, we are not one for territory, for colonial master, for language, for culture. We are not one. United States, United Nations, African Union is aware of that. So I want Mr. Muhammadu Buhari in Nigeria and his colleagues in Cameroon, Phobia, they should understand that. We, the people of Southern Cameroon, we are independent territory. The whole world is aware of that. I urge Mr. Mbia to call for dialogue, let's speak in foreign territory and dialogue like reasonable people. That is what Southern Cameroonian people, that's what we are fighting. We are fighting because to dialogue. It's not war. Bring Southern Cameroon and La Republique together. So we are urging Phobia to come in Switzerland, to come to dialogue table. Let's discuss like a two nations. This is how we. I also urge African Union to stand up now and look for a political way, economic way that can make African people stay in this continent. Because since the beginning of independence for this continent, African Union have never do something for African people, politically, economically. African people are dead. African youth are. African Union cannot do nothing. National government organization that is time for Africa. It's time for any goodwill organization and government that can rescue African people in the hands of this African dictator, African Union that cannot do nothing for African people. This is my little contribution.
Fortunately, the line is not stable to get Mr. Lawrence's contribution to the end. Meanwhile, there is another caller. Let's hear you. Hello.
Good afternoon, Rita. Good afternoon, lovers of African media. This is Ngowe myself from Douala, Cameroon. Rita, when you look at the way kidnapping and killings and all sorts of things is taking place in both Cameroon and Nigeria, I bet you it is very, very alarming. And I just begin to laugh at this particular government. For how many times have these two countries met in order to combat these separatist groups and all terrorist groups, and it is still not working? Look at it critically, up to 8 times, and and nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. That shows that the military option can never be a solution to any grievances that is taking place in any place in the world. I begin to wonder, I begin to ask a question that someone should tell me a country where a military solution has ever solved any grievances of a group of people in that particular area. You are going to realize that military options has never been a solution and can never be a solution. Like everybody here and there, they have been crying, military option can never be a solution to any place. The only solution to any grievances in any war, in anywhere, is only through dialogue. It's only through dialogue. No matter what the Cameroon government and the Nigerian government they do, it can never solve any problem if they don't sit on a round table and to discuss on the problems why people are fighting, why people are fighting. Because you can't tell me that the military option or there is a meeting that just passed in Nigeria concerning the insecurity aspect in these two countries. But it's just of recent, a priest was kidnapped in Manfi, in Manu. And you are going to realize that no matter how many meetings that these people hold, it's as if these people, they just hold these meetings just to spend government money in which nothing can never be done. Nothing can never be done. I bet you there are areas even in Cameroon here that a minister can never go. Some military people can never go. But yet they are holding meetings every day concerning insecurity, how they can combat insecurities in this country and even in Nigeria. Kidnapping is the order of the day in Nigeria. Kidnapping is the order of the day. And yet, people, we keep on blindfolding people that they are solving matters. There is no way. The only solution here is through dialogue. If these people cannot dialogue with the group of people who are crying, if these people cannot dialogue with a group of people who are protesting, who want to separate, and who are holding guns, I bet you there is nothing that can ever be solved. We have seen examples in countries. We have seen in countries where military option, they have failed. Why do we think that it is only in our own case that we think military option will work? In which these very military people, they go on the field, they die every day. These people like this, in fact, I can really say they are very wicked. Because why? They are sending the other people's children on the field to go and be dying, So the only thing is through dialogue, and no other thing can ever solve this particular problem. Thank you.
Angwe myself for your take, and we get the last caller before getting the last intervention of our guest in the studio. We get the last caller, Mr. Morris, I think. Mr. Morris, your views on the continent. Let's hear you.
Good afternoon, African Media. Good afternoon, Rita and the panelists. I am Martin calling in from Douala. Yes, Rita, two blind people trying to lead their various ships. That's why this has always been a catastrophe. Well, you see Nigeria and Cameroon, they're coming in, I think, for the sixth time or more, still talking on the same thing, and nothing, no achievement is actually been recorded so far. Well, look at the territory of Nigeria. Nigeria all alone, only within their territory, they already have Boko Haram, they already have Nyenti Allah, they have Fulani headsmen, they have Oduduwa Republic before even the IPOP coming in now. Have Buhari dealt with them so far? You look at all these groups, they are linked to Buhari tribesmen apart from IPOP. And Buhari has never ever related to them as terrorists. It is only the IPOPs that are actually far-fetched from him that he feels they can actually name them as IPOP and see how they can come quickly to quench them so far. But whatever, it is not working. Look too at Cameroon, it is the same incidents too. All the descendants of the people that were actually supposed to get back to the root cause and see how they can get through dialogue and solve them, they are trying to use military positions. You see Cameroon now getting married now to Nigeria to a common resolution of this crisis. They have only one aim or one means, which is what? That of the military. You see, the military too in the Republic of Nigeria and in Cameroon, they have actually been overstretched. And they actually and we are seeing for all these years so far, there's actually no way forward. Buhari came in to solve terrorism in his country, but he instead came in, you see, the issue of Nyenti Allah came up, headsmen, Fulani headsmen and so forth, Oduduwa Republic, they came up actually on Buhari's regime. And somebody who is almost getting to his last point, the last few years within his tenure of office, and with all these challenges, you feel you can be able to accomplish it? No way. I think it is high time the two leaders, Cameroon and Biya, let them get back to their respective countries and see how they can see, looking at the root cause of this problem. Let them handle the problem of unemployment. Let them get back to dialogue and see that they get back to the root cause of this problem. What are the worries of some of these people who actually come in because either caused by maybe unemployment, poverty, and so on and so forth, that the government feel that they can only use force through the military means to solve them. It did not work yesterday, it did not work today, and it will not work tomorrow. Well, we have examples around the world. You see even America that have actually tried to change the trajectory in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Yemen, and it has not worked so far. And they feel that it is them that will work. No way. Well, let it be clear. Let it be clear that you see all what is happening now. It is actually the youths who are on the forefront of this fight, and because they have actually been neglected for so long, and they no longer see a vision on these old analog people that are actually leading their various nations. And I think that to solve this problem now, we start addressing the issue of unemployment and poverty in our various countries, and see how we can get in to the root cause of some of these problems and solve them once and for all. If not, there is still an opportunity, but let them give way to those who have more maybe wider head, or who are more open and more sincere, that can face these people face to face and see how to solve some of these problems. We see in Nigeria, they are just playing to the gallery. The same people sponsoring and the same people moving to the bushes and moving those guys and resettling them and sending them abroad and inserting some into the military. And you feel that is the best solution? Well, no way. Let them keep on trying their game, but let them remember that history and only history alone shall judge them.
Mr. Maurice Martin for that take, and we close the lines for calls. Having now to get from you, Mr. Andrew Atem, your last take, but I'd like your last take to be a remark on this statement by one of our viewers who says Cameroon and Nigeria are both violators of international treaties duly ratified by they themselves. He says the Green Tree Accord warrants both Cameroon and Nigeria to get back to their respective borders before independence, but it is a clause that Cameroon is violating. The so-called Nigeria-Cameroon transborder ally may end in shambles if the two parties keep violating international treaties. What do you have to say about this?
Well, let me answer that directly before I say what I wanted to say. You see, Africans need proper education. When I use the word proper education, that simply means that we need to get past the level of having to believe or to accept or to put ourselves in that position to be instructed by some what you call treaties or laws or whatever. We have seen laws, constitutions built by the United States and the United Nations and EU and NATO, whereby themselves who made those rules and regulations which seem to be very binding, they violated those rules and regulations. Yeah. So it is man who made law, and the laws are, how will I call it, they are adapted to change based on the circumstances. So I think that if the idea between Cameroon and Nigeria is all good, but the question is by what means do they want to bring the insecurity become the case of the subject of discussion today, and that's what we have been discussing on. But the aspect of the two countries seeming to form as one ally or build some sense of unison should not accept the fact that they are violating what they call the border rights. The border rights were being, how will I call it, inaugurated or enforced in 1884 at the Berlin Conference when the African states were being divided. And that is a violation on its own that the Africans themselves are not aware of, and nobody seems to take it into consideration. We cannot be told, as a matter of fact, Madam Rita, I don't want to be distracted. I'm not really in the best mood today, but I think that there are a lot of things that I could have said, or I'm in the position to say, to educate a lot of people to understand what really is going on, because Africans have an acute problem, and that's why we are taking time to educate the masses.
Yes.
Because we are not going to expect a people to rise up, we are not going to expect a people to be able to get to that place of self-determination if they do not have that awareness and are giving the profound understanding of what is really happening in Africa. One thing I want to say here is that I will deny vehemently to accept that solutions would ever come from our government. We are not going to vote presidents that will still go there and do the same things that we are complaining today. We have been running down this road for a very long period. We want Africans to understand that presidents must not come from political parties, and president must not be democratically elected. That idea needs to leave their mind. Africans are Africans, and Africans need to find their own systems to build their own structures that are able to reflect them. As a matter of fact, when we are talking of African solution, African problem for African solution, we are not saying that the solution should come from the government, should come from the masses of the Africans that makes the population of this continent, and this is very important. So Africa is that body that has been broken down into pieces. Like we saw when Christ was breaking down bread and giving to 12 disciples. He said, this is my body that is broken down for you. A body is broken down for you. That simply means that what he gave to this person is different from what he gave to this other person. And in order for that body to work in its capacity, all of them will need to come together. And that is why we are not going to respect the border treaties and the border laws. Africa is one, and Africa should be treated as a sovereign continent. And thus the Africans need to understand that it is in their responsibility to come out not as in political parties. I have told them long and many times without number that those nations that propagate and push democracy to Africa do not apply democracy. Let them go and vote out the Queen in England. Who can go and vote out the Pope in Vatican? As a matter of fact, we need to understand that structures that elections do not take place do better than structures that elections do take place. It is just a deception to give the majority the impression that they can choose their own destiny, when yet they do not understand that the minority is just using the efforts and the energy of the majority to help push the agenda to power. Why elections do not take place in families? Why does election do not take place in churches? But all of those structures seem to be doing better than our leadership today. So we must grow beyond this level to understand that China do not vote presidents. China appoint presidents, and the appointment is given to 2,980 individuals to appoint the president in China. Why can we not appoint presidents in Africa? Why must we keep going out? A small country of 26 million people have 360 political parties. If you have to reduce the population of 26 million, it gives you almost about to 65,000 people behind one political party. That gives CPDM the majority over all these minority groups. So it is the notion that Africans are always thinking that what has been set down by the West should be what is good for Africa. We need to build our own systems. And this system that we need to build needs to come by the revolt from the masses that are going to put a pressure on these governments, these individuals. What is their position of how they want their nations to be run? And until they get active into politics and decision, they will allow these old men and these bad leaders to run down their nations for nothing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Atem A. Bako. You are a Pan-Africanist. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation and for giving us equally your intellectual know-how on today's edition of Views on the Continent.
Thank you very much.
Okay, televiewers, this is where we pull in the curtains on your program of today, Views on the Continent. It was an interesting one, thanks to the technical department equally. Tomorrow is another rendezvous with Clarice Widoven. Stay tuned and keep trusting our Pan-African television.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it. I very appreciate all what you are talking about. Good day and good day to all.